All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to call the Thursday, February 5th, 2026 meeting of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Transportation Committee to order. We'll call the February 5th, 2026 meeting of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Transportation Committee to order. Let the record reflect it is 10:01. And I will turn to Director Lauren to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hand over your card. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Director Lauren. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Branscombe,
Yes, ma'am.
Clarici,
Here.
Early absent, Jennings absent, Jones absent, Kennedy, Lauren,
Here.
Sander absent, Vice Chair Boomgarden,
Here.
Vice Chair Chapman,
Here.
Chair Desmond is absent, and ex officio member Tacker for Sevis.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. With that, we're going to move on to public communication. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak on anything that's not on our agenda, you will have 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments?
There's no public comment.
May I make a quick comment?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. First of all, I will have to leave at 11 o'clock so that I can get back to Marysville, California for our 175th birthday.
Nice.
I didn't have anything to do with it. Anyway, I hope it doesn't affect the quorum, but I have to leave.
We should be done by then.
I think we'll be okay by then, but thank you.
We'll go quickly.
That's right. All right. Thank you. Congratulations on 175 years.
Keep it-
Even though I read in this SACB, there's some dispute whether it was,
shh.
yeah,
Oh, come on.
exactly. All right.
Conversation is cheery.
All right, disclosures. Do any of any of the directors have an item in which they have a conflict of interest in, they need to recuse from? Okay, seeing none, we will move to the consent calendar. There are 3 items on the consent calendar. Do any of my colleagues wish to pull anything for conversation on consent? Hey, I'm not seeing anything there. Do we have any public comment on our consent calendar?
There's no public comment.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Laura-
With that, I will turn.
I will move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Lauren, second by Director Clarici. Any further conversation on this item? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, zooming along, we are now on to one of our 2 action items. Agenda number 4 is the 2026 Transportation Committee charge, and we will turn to Christina Spence.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's nice to see you all. Look forward to another fun and exciting year on the Transportation Committee. So today we have the 2026 Transportation Committee charge. So this sort of outlines the work that we see ahead that we'll be talking to you about over the course of the year. Just a little highlights for you. Funding will obviously be a consistent activity. We've got the federal funding rounds. There's going to be 3 of them that are administered this year. We have our active transportation program, the regional portion, and we have our Senate Bill 125 transit funding. We'll be coming forward here pretty soon with another allocation plan for that. We have our grant prioritization work, both support of the current prioritized projects, but also, as we will be doing every year, another round of prioritization to select projects to support for the following year and following cycle. Also this year, transit is going to be a hot topic that we're going to talk to you about quite a lot. We have the SB 125 long range financial sustainability work that will be wrapping up in the middle of the year. And then we'll be looking towards implementing some strategies from that, but really focus on helping our partners in a very interesting and difficult time related to transit funding, but also how we can use that to support our blueprint implementation as well. This is really kind of going to form the backbone, I think, of a lot of our transit work, that report and the findings from that. And we'll create a transit vision that we're going to be taking forward also to you all over the course of the year that looks at 5 years sort of out of how we can continue to implement Blueprint with transit. You're going to hear from Leo in a few minutes today too to talk about a transit report. So that's just the kinds of things that we'll be presenting to you to start to kick off all of this transit work. We'll also be bringing new pavement management program that was part of the federal funding round discussions. something to help support our partners with understanding pavement conditions and how we can continue to support that. As well as safety targets. We've heard loud and clear over the last few years. We've seen a not great trend with safety in our region, on our roadways with injuries and fatalities. And we've discussed here with the committee and the board that that's something we might want to address from a regional perspective and look at setting our own safety targets. So that's something that's important to us that we'll be taking forward more towards the end of the year. And then, of course, continued work on mobility zones and our comprehensive or the CMCP for US 50, and our new role as SACOG with CARTA in the tolling and managed lanes work that continues on in the region. So no shortage of topics over the course of the year, but it'll be, I think, a lot of really good discussions and a lot of work that you all be able to help us with. So with that, ask any questions, happy to answer them. And there's, I think, a motion to adopt the recommend adoption of the charge.
Thank you, Christina. Do any of the directors have any clarifying questions before we move to public comment? All right, Sina, do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
There's no public comment.
All right, no public comment. I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions or conversation for Christina?
I'll move the item.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Director Clarici and a second by Director Boomgarden. Any further conversation? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Christina. Okay, on to action item number 5, unmet transit needs finding for Sacramento Regional Transit District, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties, and we will turn to Barbara. Welcome.
There we go. So everyone hear me? Good morning, Barbara Von Bechtold. I'm a planner on your transportation team. So before you today, you have the unmet transit needs findings that'll apply to next fiscal year, so 2026-27. The State Transportation Development Act requires that SACOG make annual unmet transit needs findings for both the Sacramento Regional Transit District and the TDA eligible jurisdictions in Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties. The TDA statutes require that SACOG follow a specific process in making those unmet transit needs findings. And we've carried out that process that'll again apply to next fiscal year, and that's shown in attachment A. The transit service requests we received during the unmet transit needs process were evaluated by our Social Service Transportation Advisory Councils. We call them STACs for short. And they're from each county, the 4 counties that we do this process for. The STACs concur with all the unmet transit needs findings that are before you today. And we have them summarized in attachment B and then in more detail in attachment C, D, and E in your packet. Completion of this process will allow SACOG to continue apportioning TDA local transportation funds for next fiscal year to agencies eligible to use them. So the action we're asking for today is the Transportation Committee recommend to the board to approve the minutes from the public events and hearings held on unmet transit needs and adopt the attached resolutions regarding fiscal year 26-27 unmet transit needs in each county and the Sacramento Regional Transit District. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Barbara. Any questions from directors for Barbara before we move to public comment? Director Prince.
No, we're on time, so. Keep quick. Christina more than hinted that there's some financial challenges for the transportation RT, SAC RT and what have you. And now we're talking about unmet transit needs. Those are sort of in conflict with each other, aren't they? Because unmet means, well, we need to expand, but at the same time, we know that the existing network is under financial strain. Are there any thoughts on that?
Well, specifically for the Sacramento Regional Transit District, the Transportation Development Act funds, their funds can only be used for transit purposes in the district. So they're already receiving all the TDA funds. So there really isn't any more to give them from that, but there's obviously a connection there. There weren't any unmet transit needs were found reasonable to meet in the Sacramento Regional Transit District either this year.
There what?
There weren't any unmet transit needs that were found reasonable to meet based on our SACOG definitions for the coming fiscal year for the Sacramento Regional Transit District. So there isn't more service recommended like you said, and then thereby stressing the funding more.
It'll be interesting to see how they work their budget going forward.
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Lauren.
I just wanted to comment and thank you for all the work. There's an enormous amount of work reflected in this document, and I think it's very thoughtful. And I know that I will be looking at it for Gildo County and, you know, as we move forward with our plan. So I just wanted to thank you for your work, for staff's work.
Okay. And do we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Okay. I'll bring it back to the board for further comments or a motion.
I'm
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
have what may be perceived as a rude comment, so I apologize, particularly given what you just said.
Yeah.
I almost didn't
No,
say
it's
what I was
okay.
gonna say.
That's-
Are there examples of a report like this leading to positive results in our region? Like, as you just suggested, it'd be nice to be able to act on what we know. From when I was serving in transit leadership, I don't know that that's the case. And I just came from a meeting in DC where they talked about 99% of the reports we send to DC, no one ever looks at, right? Like, they're unused, untapped, unresourced, everything. But I just wonder, is there good positive like action based on what happens in this report?
Sure.
Sorry
When
for
we
that.
have unmet transit needs that are found reasonable to meet in this report, that's something SACOG tracks over. The operators have a 2-year period if they have additional local transportation funds available to implement the recommended service changes or additional services that are in there. So we've seen positive results multiple times. Sometimes those projects end up being pilots where they were not successful. There wasn't as much demand as might have been demonstrated by the number of people who were putting in comments. Sometimes we've seen comments, 100 comments from a certain area. They're saying we need the service to go to this location, and that service is implemented. But then very many people don't write it. So then the operators, after a certain amount of time, sometimes those services have been discontinued because they weren't successful in having enough ridership to support them. But yes, we've seen successful outcomes.
Okay, I appreciate that. So people do act on
Mhm.
recommendations.
Yeah, they're required to act on anything that's an unmet transit need that's reasonable to meet, assuming there are local transportation funds to support that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And just, I'm going to ask a question on that piece. So just can you remind me, so the TDA dollars come in, right? And then whatever's not used to meet unmet needs, those dollars go back to the jurisdiction, right?
So whatever amount of TDA local transportation funds that are needed to support existing
Right.
transit services, those have to go to transit.
Right.
Transit comes first in the
Right.
TDA. Anything above and beyond that can be used for bicycle projects, pedestrian projects, as well as streets and roads projects outside of the Sacramento Regional Transit District. Like I mentioned, they're specifically named in the laws only being able to use those funds for transit. They cannot be used outside of
Right.
transit.
And I think that's to Director Sanders, but kind of the rub a little bit, right? Is that in order to then, to do that, you have to pull dollars away from dollars that are allocated to a jurisdiction who's already counting on those dollars coming in, right? For roads, for bike paths. So then it's like, well, that's not an unmet transit need. And part of that we see in some of the report, the ones that are here, where those dollars would then be pulled from a jurisdiction to meet that need. Right. And I think that to me, I see that we see it at YT, at Yolo Transportation Districts, kind of that rub of then the jurisdictions are losing those dollars, even though they're technically not theirs in the first place.
Yeah, and it's dependent on the jurisdictions too. We do have some jurisdictions where they choose to use 100% of their dollars for transit service. We have them throughout
Yeah.
our region, and then others, as you said, there's that split there where it makes the conversation more difficult.
Yeah.
When there are transit needs that are reasonable to meet, and there's also the other needs they have with
Right.
bicycle, pedestrian, and
Exactly.
streets and roads projects.
Thank you. Director Calucci.
Real quickly. From a transportation planner who avoids transit assiduously. But you say bike and ped projects, now that's Article 3? Okay, so that comes up before Article 4. Article 4 is, you all know this, you already know this. When was the last time there was Article 8 in this region? I'm curious, was it yesterday? Was it 24 years ago? I mean, when the pachinko machine of TDA money went down to the bottom, was there not transit taking the money? I mean, in El Dorado County, it's been decades since that has happened.
And like I said, it depends on the jurisdiction.
Okay.
There's some that do, like I said, have use a portion for transit, use some for streets and roads.
Okay.
And others choose to use it all for transit.
Okay,
Whether they had other, streets and roads needs, they still
Right.
just use everything for transit.
okay. Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments on this item? No, and with that, I will entertain a motion.
I move the item.
We have a motion by Director Lauren,
Second.
a second by Vice Chair Boomgarden. Any further conversation? All in favor, please say aye. Oppose, abstain. All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Barbara. All right. We are now on to agenda item number 6. It's our first informational item of 2. It's the 2027 Regional Active Transportation Program Policy Framework. And we will welcome Summer Lopez. Morning.
Good morning. I'm Summer Lopez. I'm a senior planner on our transportation team. And today I'm presenting an information item on the draft 2027 Regional Active Transportation Program Policy Framework. Believe it or not, we are back with the ATP. So Active Transportation Program, ATP, it's a statewide program that's meant to increase walking, bicycling, and non-motorized rolling throughout the state. It's a 3-component funding program. So we have statewide, small urban and rural, and MPO. Those first 2 are managed by the California Transportation Commission, CTC, and then MPO is individually managed by each MPO. We do SACOGs in partnership with El Dorado County Transportation Commission and Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. We are expecting about $619 million for Cycle 8 for the whole state. These are our milestones for the program this year. So next month, we'll be requesting that you take action on this policy framework. It's our guideline document for the program. And the statewide call for projects will open in March, close in June. Our regional call for projects will open in June and close in September, with projects getting adopted next year. There were no major policy changes in the state guidelines this cycle, just clarifying, simplifying language, consolidation of MPO guidelines into one section. They've also removed the federal disadvantaged community tools simply because they don't exist anymore. Those were the Climate Economic Justice Screening Tool and Equitable Transportation Community Explorer. And quick builds are no longer allowed in the statewide program, but they are allowed in the MPO component. Quick build projects being infrastructure projects that could be lower cost with a quicker implementation. The regional policy framework proposed changes are these 3 things: administrative changes, updating our regional disadvantaged community definition for consistency with the 2025 blueprint, and then adding funds from the carbon reduction program to the ATP for trails. I'm going to go over each of these right now, but if you're interested in seeing the full account of all of the proposed changes, you can see the track changes version in attachment C. Administrative changes are just language updates for clarity and consistency with statewide guidelines, removal of language related to our budget amendment from cycle 7, and clarifying the trail definition. This definition has not changed from past cycles, but it wasn't clear in the past guidelines. So we just wanted to update it to ensure clarity and transparency, because we do offer 3 extra points for trail projects. We just wanted to make it very clear and transparent what that meant. Next is the regional disadvantaged community definition. The CTC allows MPOs to adopt a regional disadvantaged community definition, but this definition must be adopted as part of an existing regional planning document, and it must serve greater planning purposes than just the ATP. Historically, we've used the environmental justice analysis from the blueprint. This cycle, we've updated it with the 2025 Blueprint Plan Performance Appendix, which contains areas of persistent poverty, high birth and marriage rates, equity priority communities, CalEnviroScreen, and tribal communities. Those last 2, CalEnviroScreen and tribal communities, are already included as part of the statewide disadvantaged community definition. We do use those for our program. And the statewide definition also includes Healthy Places Index, median household income, and free reduced school lunch program. So that's kind of the full breadth of the definitions that we have available for disadvantaged communities. Lastly, we propose to include carbon reduction program funds for trails as part of cycle 8 call for projects. In 2023, the board adopted a set aside of this funding for both mobility zones and trails. We are anticipating about $3 million being available for trails, but we will know that exact amount when mobility zones wrap up in about a month. So by the time that the final policy framework comes to you, we should know that exact amount. The process for scoring projects the trail projects will be scored the same, using the same criteria as the active transportation program. The highest scoring trail projects will receive carbon reduction program funds until those are exhausted, and then they will receive ATP funding in the order that they fall in the list, with the non-trail project list. Any projects that have carbon reduction program funded portions of their trail projects will not be subject to CTC ATP programming requirements. So the carbon reduction program funding will be programmed separate from the ATP program projects. I would like to close by sharing budget information. First, we are expecting about $17 million for our region. This does not include the carbon reduction program funds. So if we have $3 million, it could be $20 million available to our region this cycle. As you may remember, we had a massive budget cut last cycle in the ATP, and we do not expect that to occur this cycle. Again, this is an information item. The proposed changes to the regional policy framework include the administrative updates, updating the regional disadvantaged community definition to be consistent with the 2025 blueprint, and adding carbon reduction program funding to the total ATP amount. I'm happy to take any questions or feedback you might have.
Sure. Director Branscombe.
Thank you, Summer, right? Could you go back to the DAC slide, disadvantaged communities? What do high birth and marriage rates have to do with disadvantaged communities?
Having just come back from DC and meeting with the Hill folks in the administration, those two are the newest federal criteria is high birth and marriage rates and areas of persistent poverty.
But is that looked at as a problem?
That's looked at as something that needs investment where there has been prior underinvestment.
Just hold it. But in what sense?
I understand.
Are high birth and marriage rates bad in their eyes?
Oh,
they're good.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm going to get into like a lot of the rationale there, just that these are the criteria that were adopted in the 2025 blueprint, right? And so the two on the very top are the sort of latest from the federal administration. They are
But
looking at.
in what sense? I'm trying to understand, are they viewed negatively? Is high birth and marriage rates bad or good in their eyes? Is it a problem or is it something they want to encourage?
I think the lack of, it seems like it's a problem and they want to
Oh my
encourage more
God.
They're
investment in those
encouraging,
Oh my
areas.
God.
they're encouraging the births.
I'm
of
shocked.
marriages.
I'm
I'm just
absolutely
worried.
shocked.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think
Try it.
it's hard. I think they're trying to encourage investment into areas that have high birth and marriage rates. So I don't think they
I see
see
it as a
high birth.
problem. That's amazing.
Uh-huh.
Amazing. That's federal.
Yeah.
In which department?
All of them.
Yeah, we can certainly follow up and give you more information. When this
I'll be
came
talking
out
to
a
federal
year
people
ago,
about
we
this.
were as surprised as you were. I think the idea is it's trying to track to areas that will have future population growth.
Yes, so they can
Yeah.
ride bicycles.
So that's
I'm-
about the
I'm
best that I
gassed.
can do, but it is a criteria. It is a federal criteria. It is being used and talked about quite a bit. And so you did adopt that as part of your blueprint plan last.
That frightens me.
Right.
Thank
Any
you.
further questions for Summer before we turn to public comment? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on this item, Lynette?
There's no public comment.
All right, thank you. Do we have any further discussion from my colleagues on this item? All right, seeing none, thank you, Summer, for the information. It's an informational item, so we look forward to having this back in front of us. And with that, we will move to agenda item number 7, Regional Transit Pulse, the 2025 report, and we will welcome Leo Torres. Good morning.
Pulse.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, directors. My name is Leo Torres, and I'm a transportation analyst working on all things transit on your transportation team. And I'm really thrilled and happy to be talking to you about SACOG's first annual Regional Transit Pulse Report. The report is an interactive web-based storytelling tool that provides insights on trends that we're seeing across the 4 key performance metrics on the screen here of the region-wide 6-county transit system. And so the report is really just one element of SACOG's broader performance monitoring responsibilities over the regional transportation system. And it helps us identify ongoing trends as our region's transit operators report new data to the federal government via the National Transit Database. But more importantly, it helps the region identify the progress and challenges that the transit system is facing and helps SACOG identify where we can be of additional support to our operators as we collectively seek to implement the newly adopted regional plan. So I'm going to preview just a few key insights that we cover in the report today. The first of which is that ridership recovery from the pandemic looks very different when you parse it out by transit mode. And so you'll see an incredible growth year over year for our microtransit and ADA paratransit services, which we expect will continue to grow as the region's population continues to age and more of our transit operators experiment with new microtransit service models. The other success story for our region here is the light green line, which represents local fixed route buses. And so the latest annual data that we have goes through 2024, so it's a little bit stale, and it shows that buses are back to 80% of their pre-pandemic levels on the chart. But some of the transit operators also share preliminary monthly data with the transit database, and we're really happy to see that local bus ridership has actually fully recovered to 100% of 2019 levels in more recent months. On the other spectrum, though, you will see commuter buses on the dark green line do continue to struggle as hybrid and remote work levels remain sustained. The next trend or insight here that we got from the report is that local fixed route buses really have been the backbone of the region's ridership base over the last 2 decades, with light rail providing critical high-capacity transit access to riders in the region. You'll also note that growing orange trend on the chart, which again is ADA, paratransit, microtransit ridership. And so our focus here at SACOG has been to help identify ways that our operators can improve the speed, reliability, and frequency of the bus system that so many riders rely on through the Regional Transit Network study that the board adopted back in 2024. And we'll continue to build on the recommendations of that important study this year. Shifting over to on the service side, right? So we're talking about ridership. Now we're shifting to service levels, which is represented really here by the amount of service hours out on the street. We saw the region's transit operators make service optimizations during the kind of worst of the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. But in 2024, we did see a full recovery of service levels to their pre-pandemic 2019 rate. However, you will note that this is still below the region's peak in the mid-2000s, and that's because service really never fully recovered after the financial crisis of the Great Recession, where the transit operators had to cut thousands of hours of service in order to balance their budgets. We also saw the highest ridership levels in the region during this peak of the mid-2000s up until those service cuts. And so we're taking those lessons from that experience to help us understand how we can address the current financial challenges of the transit system as the operators do continue to face increasing costs and revenues just haven't kept up. And so we'll definitely have more on that topic at this committee in the next few months. But speaking of cost, this is a good segue or transition to talk about cost effectiveness, or the cost to operate transit per boarding, per trip, which is really just one of many measures that the federal government tracks from the data that the operators report to them. And so region-wide, we're seeing cost effectiveness is improving on local fixed route buses, right? The most used transit mode, after a big jump during the pandemic, which again points to riders returning to the system despite operating costs increasing at the same time due to inflation and insurance, the cost of everything going up across the transit system. We're also seeing that on the region's fastest growing transit mode, paratransit and microtransit, we're seeing significant cost effectiveness improvements, again, due to that strong ridership growth, despite costs also increasing. But I'll note that as we have discussions about financial health and sustainability of the transit system, this important service is also very, very expensive. It costs $47 per boarding region-wide to operate microtransit and ADA paratransit service in 2024. And for reference, on that last slide, when we looked at local fixed route service, it costs just $11 per boarding as a kind of reference point. And so local buses and light rail do continue to be the most cost-effective transit modes in the region. And that's simply because they're able to take on more ridership without really delivering a ton of extra service like is required on the microtransit and paratransit side. And then last but not least, we also found that the operators continued to make progress on the region's state of good repair needs of the transit vehicle fleets that we have active. And so over the last 10 years, we saw a 6% decrease in the mileage of the average mileage of transit vehicles across the region, which indicates that newer buses that come online continue to be added to the active fleet as operators retire their oldest and highest mileage buses. But as we know, threatening that progress is the state's zero emission transition mandates, which require that transit operators not only purchase vehicles that are almost twice the cost of the existing fleet, but also invest a significant amount of capital into electric charging infrastructure. And so I really just touched the surface here on all the insights of the report. There's a lot more important trends and cool maps, if you're into that, available online at sacog.org/transitpulse. And that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Leo. Any questions for Leo before we go to public comment?
On the microtransit front, are there agencies in our area that have utilized private sector connections or partnerships as opposed to running things in-house? Because nationally, if you look at microtransit, there's sort of two different paths. And many of the long-term established interest groups in transit are trying to knock down microtransit by sort of referring to the most expensive varieties of it as being the problem. And they sort of skip the partnership models that exist elsewhere. So I'm just curious in our region, what's happening with regard to that?
Yeah, that's a good note. So I would say the majority, if not all, of microtransit service is purchased transportation. So it's contracted out to the private sector.
We do have one public comment on this item. We have Glenn Mandelkern. Welcome, Glenn. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Okay. So I wanted to say thank you very much. I'm very glad to hear what Christina had to say at the beginning of this segment and also what Leo has presented. I found out about Transit Pulse this December, and I came here because I wanted to specifically extend my thanks and support. My main reason is because as I went through it and the accompanying documents, I feel very validated because of the research that I've done both formally and informally on this subject. I took it as a holiday gift, and I celebrated many things about it. And as happens with some holiday gifts, I'm here to start a return. And by that, I actually mean I want to suggest some returns and exchanges in the form that when I noticed the Transit Pulse, it says that you will be offering this annually. I would like to ask you, what would you think about doing it quarterly? Kind of like my relatives that ask me, why do you only visit me once a year? Why not every few months, to know what you're up to know what you're doing? Some of these talks come about when I'm talking to people who are relocating here. They want to know how to get around. And so the question comes up, especially between counties. Some people say, well, you absolutely need a car. I try to convince them to use transit. One thing that I really very much would like for you to consider is transit between agencies, especially adjacent where county lines are, given the travel changing patterns. I've seen that from my discussions, a number of people want to get between counties, right, like where Citrus Heights and Roseville are. Well, one main question that comes up a lot is why is there no transit on Sunrise Avenue and Sunrise Boulevard when they're the same street in that stretch there? Why do we have to make such a big sweep to the west and then back east? In closing, I'd like to say that with this quarterly update, it would be similar to the main reason I wanted to bring that up is that when I read the survey, I found a rather disturbing statement which said that I have no confidence in the ability of SACOG to design a workable plan. I believe that by giving these quarterly updates, you will be able to combat that skepticism. And by
30
people,
seconds.
okay, and by people seeing your progress, you can motivate them and inspire them to take the very trends that you're improving. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, and that was the only public comment card I have on that agenda item. I will turn it back to the board for any further discussion on this item. All right, seeing none, thank you, Leo. Appreciate the update. And we are now moving on to agenda item number 8, which is receive and file, mobility zone mid-process update on project prioritization. It's in our staff packet, so we we'll move on from that one. We are now to other matters. I'll turn to Christina or Director Corliss.
We have no other matters.
No other matters.
No.
All right. Any of my board colleagues have any other matters they would like to discuss? All right. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.